Hey guys, how are you doing? This story here is the craziest one I've ever brought to the channel. The guy simply reincarnates as a super powerful ghost hunter. But there's a catch. He doesn't believe ghosts exist, even though several female ghosts show up to be with him. The protagonist thinks they're just pretty women in cosplay. You're going to see how this story is funny and very entertaining. So watch the video until the end, because the last chapter will blow your mind. Our story already begins with the protagonist cursing on an internet forum. He used to bully people who believed in the spiritual world. Since he thought this was nonsense, he had fun mocking people. He even challenged ghosts and demons. He said that if they were real, they should come to his house. His messages ended up making many enemies curse him. Our boy's name is Huo Shi, and he was a realistic guy who wasn't afraid of ghosts. Believing that spiritual beings existed was something only idiots did. It wasn't possible to move objects, much less come out of the television. And besides being an otaku who only played video games, he was also a clean freak. Among all his hobbies, his favorite was arguing on the internet. He even felt happy when he won a discussion, saying he was really good at it. Besides winning arguments, he also said he would win a fight with ghosts if they happened to exist. While using the computer, we see the silhouette of a creature appear behind him. At that moment, his cell phone rings, and he ends up noticing that he had a strange message. It looked more like a dripping red stain, and that makes Huo think it was just part of a prank. In the message, it said he would be eliminated soon. Logically, our protagonist doesn't believe in these things, and he keeps cursing everyone. But on the television behind him, a ghost was coming out in exactly the way he said wasn't possible. Spiritual creatures had certain levels of weakness, but they didn't like to be challenged. The ghost says she's after him, whispering in his ear, and the boy said he knows very well that it's just a disguised person who broke into his room, and she opens her mouth intending to devour him, making our hero a little scared. But since he didn't believe in demons, he slapped the creature, throwing her down. Right after, he landed another punch on the ghost, and he still said he didn't allow people to enter his house because it was private property. That made the ghost think it was strange since it was common for people to get scared. Because of that, she even got a little more excited, while he told her to take off that ugly mask. That makes her prepare a giant mouth, and she ends up biting our hero's head and chewing it like it was jelly. He was so weak compared to this ghost that it wasn't even funny. And the strangest thing of all is that he kept talking even without his head. That makes the ghost keep saying he's disgusting. And she decides to leave, going into the television, saying that this human was weird. Actually, the boy had a strong spiritual energy, and he wakes up in a world divided between his universe and a universe similar to Earth. Little by little, he starts sinking into a sea of darkness, and wakes up with someone saying his name in another house. It seemed to be a silver-haired girl, and she was crying a lot, calling his name over and over. She was all wet, sitting on top of his body, and when the boy least expects it, she ends up planting a kiss on his mouth. He had already seen strange things, but this was new, and when he realized it, she was trying to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. A few seconds ago, he was being devoured by an evil ghost, so he ended up pushing her away out of fright. But it seemed like she was trying to save him from drowning, and she tried to kiss him again. That makes him get mad. But relax, he's not a wimp. It was just in that moment. The girl falls scared while he asks if that was a joke. In his head, he was thinking she was the intruder who had entered his house. But very relieved, she ended up hugging him, saying she was happy he didn't die. And she started crying, saying she was very worried because he was her best friend. At that moment, she called him Hao Jun, and not Hao Xie. And when he looked at his reflection in the puddle, he realized that his face was also different, although still similar. At that moment, he started receiving memories from the owner of this body. He had been bullied by ghosts for a long time, and on his 16th birthday, a curse in his house started tormenting him. But since our protagonist doesn't believe in ghosts, he imagined the owner of this body was just a lunatic. That's why the former owner of the body tried to end it all in a bathtub. It was at that time that his friend named Yara entered the room to save him. He could only imagine that the former owner of the body had psychological problems. Besides, now he was back to being a teenager with a strange body. In his other life, he was already an adult with a muscular, very strong body, and imagines he was reborn in this place to save the boy's life. His friend kept hugging him, saying it was really good that he was alive. Hours earlier, she had seen his farewell note on a social network. That's why she came running. So he realizes that this boy is lucky to have a friend like her, and says he needs to pay attention to her so he doesn't do this again, and already lays his head on the basketballs. He wasn't dumb, and was taking advantage of the situation. And he still says that a loser like him, who believes in ghosts, deserves affection from his friend. Realizing that this could help him, she ends up allowing it. And she still pets his head, saying the boy can always count on her. And after 20 years, he can finally feel the warmth of a girl. The shameless guy keeps saying it was very soft, and says this out loud. Yara asks, what's this soft thing he's talking about? That already makes the boy embarrassed, thinking of something to use as an excuse. He wasn't very good at handling embarrassing moments, so he started making lame excuses. Later, they decided to go for a walk, and he had read earlier that there were bandits in this area. Some civilians were being eliminated, and she steps on a red liquid. Now our hero's body was even more sensitive than his old body. With that, he can detect even the weakest spirits, hearing a groan. When he turns around, he asks who is screaming at this time of night, but Yara didn't hear anything. This makes her worried, thinking it might be some side effect of the drowning. And remember, he had a problem with dirt? In this world, the streets were dirty, but actually, he was able to see spiritual energies and got mad, complaining. Yara noticed that the street wasn't as dirty as he was complaining. And right after, he starts cursing these ugly creatures. These creatures were ghosts. And again, Yara couldn't see anything. She even thought her friend was going crazy. The street was shining, without even a speck of dust. So she asks why he is so worried about cleanliness, and if it was some kind of obsession of his. Right after that, he starts feeling sick. This was because he was adapting to his new powers. However, he didn't believe in spirits and kept insisting, saying the place was dirty. At that moment, a drop of water falls on him, and the guy imagines it was some bird's pee. But when he puts his hand on it, it was kind of gooey and seemed more like someone's spit. Then he starts to freak out because he didn't like anything disgusting, and his friend insists that it must have been rain. However, he pointed his finger up and kept telling that person to come down from the tree. And when he looked up there was no one, only him seeing it. Actually, it was another ghost playing a prank on him. I'm going to call it a prank because she was actually excited and ended up wetting him. I don't know if you understood, but I can't really say exactly what's happening because otherwise I'll get cancelled, since this story here is pretty naughty. This ghost felt attracted to him, saying the guy was peculiar because he could see her, and she ended up dropping that goo on the boy just to mark him. As soon as he reincarnated in this place, his soul ended up undergoing some modifications. Since his spiritual power level was already high, he ended up getting stronger, attracting even more ghosts. Even a high-level spiritual being became interested in him, and upon arriving in his room at dawn, she ordered all the spirits to leave, saying that he belonged to her. This was the high-level Banshee Queen, and she wanted to have our hero only for herself. The girl here was crazy and kept calling for him. Slowly, she moved towards the bed. Hao's spiritual energy was very strong, so she laid on the bed. It was extremely rare to find a human with this level of power, and this ended up making her hungry, so she began to devour his power. She did this by touching her tongue to his skin, and during his dreams, the boy imagined it was Yara on top of him. This guy was really shameless, and in his dreams, he even got scared because he didn't expect this. However, it would have been really good if this were true. But contrary to his expectations, the one there was the Demon Queen, and she went all out to absorb as much energy as possible. Because she made a noise, he ended up waking up. However, the scare was so big that he thought it was actually a man trying to attack him. The ghosts outside the room got scared by all the screaming, and in the middle of the scare, he ended up grabbing the demon queen, and he punched the creature, saying he wasn't a sissy, remembering he was still half asleep. And to finish, he lands another punch, saying he doesn't like men, but women. This left the ghost queen scared because he was not only able to see her, but also touch her. The ghosts outside started to flee in fear, and they even told each other that they weren't coming back to this place anymore. She had taken a pretty good punch to the face, and she even wondered if he was perhaps an exorcist because he even managed to hurt her. Right after that, he went back to sleep without realizing what was happening. This was a huge humiliation because she had been beaten up by a sleepwalker, and preparing a more powerful attack, she said she would not accept being humiliated. At that moment, during the dream, he moved holding her head, asking if by any chance it was this person who stole his iced tea. The boy was dreaming that he was on the beach, drinking a delicious tea. So, because of that, he charged at the ghost in a pretty compromising scene. Even she was embarrassed by that, and realized that he was absorbing her spiritual energy. He bit her like a vampire, and started draining all her energy, and the spiritual fabric clothes of the ghost started to tear. She screamed, saying she was feeling her body melting. This was because our protagonist had a lot of strength, even to the point of draining evil energies. While sleeping, he said out loud that this iced tea was very refreshing, and he even commented that it only cost 500 yen. The ghost realized that he was much stronger than she thought. Possibly, he had the power of the Rashomon ghost, and traveled to this dimension. If by any chance she could serve him, her life as a ghost would be perfect. The next morning, the sun was shining through the window, and the guy was feeling horrible, with a lot of body pain. The queen had come to wake him up, serving a delicious breakfast, and the guy gets mad, asking if she broke into his house to rob him. In a peculiar scene, she started pouring into a cup on the floor, and she even commented that boys liked this kind of treatment, while the protagonist imagined she was crazy. She was doing her best to make him fall in love with her, and even put on a cosplay, since our hero was an otaku. That was a special tea and should be offered in a special way. That's why she started pouring that iced tea on his feet, saying it was part of the presentation, and holding the cup with her toes, she served that cup to him. Remembering that our protagonist has a cleanliness obsession and kept saying that was really disgusting. Comment down here if you would drink this tea. On top of that, he starts shouting, saying she is shameless. Besides, she shouldn't keep invading his house, but the girl makes the excuse that she's there to help him. In a very affectionate way, he gives the ghost a few hits so she can learn this lesson. It seemed like the night's sleep was horrible, as his body was sore, and he starts dragging the banshee outside, telling her not to invade his house anymore. From afar, someone was watching our hero. It seemed to be some kind of demon hunter. At that moment, Hao feels his body shiver. There was someone up there watching, so he started cursing. To understand all this, we need to go back a few minutes, when special agents were arriving. This was Neon Kamio, and she was chasing the Banshee Demon Queen. Her teammate commented that the queen was very powerful. This was Officer Shiratori from the Special Inspection Agency. People in this world call ghosts and demons banshees, and there's even a group that hunts them. That goddess had great strength and was classified as anecdotal level. These invasions happened because of the barrier between the present world and the realm of the living, and depending on certain times of the year, it became more susceptible to spiritual invasions. They were tracking the queen's energy, which is why they arrived at the protagonist's house. And to make it even worse, her perfume was still concentrated on his body. Because of what happened during the night, her scent was stuck to him. With the weapon in hand, he tells his partner to prepare for the attack. Down below, our hero was saying for them not to point that weapon because it was dangerous. The girl said there was someone down there next to the demon. With that, Neon uses a spell to hear what he was saying. It was like a loudspeaker spell, and down there was Hao asking not to be hit and saying he was a good citizen. The agents didn't know if he was speaking Chinese or Japanese, but they found it strange because he had the scent of a banshee, and the guy knew she was a different being, But since he didn't believe in ghosts, he said he caught the criminal. Remember, guys, he never realizes the magic and spiritual beings of this world. He always keeps thinking they are normal people, and this will lead to many funny scenes. But will he ever realize the truth? Keep watching. From down below, he keeps shouting that this woman claimed to be the Snow Queen or something like that, and he still accuses her of being a bandit who had invaded his house. Neon Kamio immediately jumps down because she was sure that was the Banshee Queen. And since they had been chasing her all night, they couldn't miss this chance for her to escape. And her partner keeps commenting that she's too impatient. Hao notices that there's a woman jumping from the top of a building, leaping through the air. And that's not enough to convince him that ghosts and spiritual beings exist. The woman tells him to be careful because that was a powerful banshee. And when the crazy guy looks back, he gets scared. That's because the banshee was casting a gigantic ice magic, asking if Hao was allied with those people, and still says for them to be eliminated, calling everyone scum. However, at that moment, the banshee ends up taking a punch in the face. It was our hero who was hitting the ghost, calling her a naughty criminal. He said he hated annoying people who screamed non-stop. And while she was falling to the ground, the Special Forces agent jumps on her. Without giving much importance to all these scenes, he turns around and tells them to arrest the criminal. And this makes Neon curious to know who this man is, who defeated the Snow Maiden with just one blow. And she even imagines he is as strong as her father. Besides, he was speaking in Chinese. In her imagination, the guy must be some oriental master with strong cultivation foundations. This world was not as safe as it seemed, because ordinary people kept being haunted by banshees. Some other people called these underworld creatures onis, ghosts, or demons. In order to prevent demons from wandering the earth, the yin-yang masters made great efforts. They managed to maintain the balance between the realm and the present world. But the only thing that could not be stopped was the invasion of the Rikakuji, which was feared even by common ghosts. The invasion of ghosts and spirits into the anecdotal realm intensified during the new moon and became even stronger during the eclipse. And with the new moon approaching and a future eclipse, the world is facing even more turbulence. Shiratori and Neon are intensifying their efforts to catch the weaker ghosts. But with the help of an exceptional master like this boy, they could have better results. While she was thinking about all this, she realizes that Hao had disappeared. The guy ran away faster than ever, saying it was really strange that he had defeated a ghost. But of course, he didn't believe in ghosts, so he started to doubt whether that was real. At that moment, he realizes that someone was calling his name, and he ended up bumping straight into this girl, and even made her shoe fly far away. It was Yara, and he asked why the girl stopped in the middle of the path. When he realized that his schoolmate was wearing an outfit like that, he immediately got all excited. This guy is so shameless that he makes jokes that can't even be told in the video. In short, she said she worked at a store and because of an event she had to wear this costume. And she even mentions that she brought something for him to have for lunch. This girl was in love with him, so she was doing everything to get his attention. The sandwich was hot, so he should enjoy eating it. At that moment, that sandwich ended up poking through the bag, falling straight onto his foot. She gets embarrassed, and at the same time sad. And there was the sandwich that looked delicious on his friend's foot. She kept apologizing, saying she would get another snack for him. However, the guy hadn't had breakfast yet, and was starving. Holding the girl's foot, he said she didn't need to buy another snack. And he even says he's going to eat it because it looked delicious. And he immediately takes a bite of the bread, making chewing noises. The girl keeps saying he could let go of her foot, or he might end up biting her toes. So he starts pulling the bread, ripping the sock along with it. And without even realizing, he ends up taking off the girl's pantyhose with his mouth. The snack was delicious, but he started to smell foot odor. He hadn't realized he was eating a sock. Later, they sat in a park, and he asked the class leader what was going on. She explains that today is an important day because it will be a new moon, and there will be ghosts at night, according to the legend. The boy doesn't really believe in that, and she asks why he doesn't believe, since he can see the ghosts. And throwing a flirt at him, she said if the boy was feeling scared, he could sleep at her house. In response, he said that demons and ghosts don't exist, and that all this is a human invention. And with the bunny ears, she asks what he will do when the ghosts appear. Challenging the ghosts, he said if they existed, one should appear now to confront him. The place starts to get dark, with a gloomy aura. Even the street light starts to flicker, and a whistling sound is heard at the end of the square. He's already starting to freak out in fear. After this, he just needs to go home and change his underwear. It had suddenly gotten dark, and the silhouette of a ghost appears. And in the background, a shadowy face asks if her older brother would like to play with her. The eclipse had begun, and Neon wonders where that powerful boy had gone. The sun was completely covered by the moon, and thus the boundaries of the underworld were broken. Several demons would parade across the earth, and the girl gets worried because powerful beings look for powerful energies. In other words, our protagonist would be in danger with ghosts going after him. Yara already starts to get scared, hugging our hero, squeezing him. However, he tries to calm her down, saying this is just a solar eclipse. And then he asks the ghost where her house is, and the ghost throws a head on the ground. The creature was doing this just to scare him, and kept saying for him to grab this soccer ball. This makes Yara start screaming in fear, while the boy keeps saying he doesn't believe in these childish pranks. And there was the ghost trying to scare the headless ones. Our hero says this is very advanced technology, and that he won't get scared. And the demon keeps insisting they grab the soccer ball, but he wasn't managing to scare the boy. With that, he ends up kicking the head, saying these cowards think they're smart, and he ends up kicking the head, sending it flying. And right after, he starts stepping on the ghost's head. At this point in the story, I don't know if he really doesn't believe in ghosts, or if he's just joking, but the demon starts screaming because he was being trampled. Neon hears this noise from afar, and realizes they were the screams of a ghost, and might call for help. After defeating that creature, Yara asks her friend if that wasn't a bad idea. In response, the boy says he taught those kids who were trying to scare him a lesson. And he even says for her not to worry, but there was a shadow wrapping around his leg. And at that moment, she ends up being possessed by that ghost, thus having a key invasion, drastically changing Yara's personality. She speaks in a dark voice, as if it were a demonic voice, and throws herself on the ground, saying she was feeling very cold, while Hao just imagines it's one of her pranks. Soon after, the girl hugs our hero, saying she feels her body getting cold. These actions from the girl make him think she likes him, and the boy's wicked mind even imagines it would be great to be with her. However, the girl's level of craziness started to get bigger, with her saying she would like to suck all the warm energy from our hero. I think he understood very well what she meant, and if you also understood, comment below. So he says he didn't bring protection for them to do that. And from afar, Neon is watching a human and an evil being dating. This scares her, wondering what the hell they are doing. However, she imagines this isn't possible, that actually the demon is trying to devour the poor girl. At that moment, she hears someone shouting for him to stop, and she even calls the guy a bastard, saying she won't let a demon devour an innocent. She had kicked the protagonist in the face, and was now holding a spell seal. Right after, she placed that seal on the boy, calling him an evil spirit. But at that moment, she realized he was Hao, the boy who had defeated the Banshee Queen, and she starts to get embarrassed, asking what he was doing in the public square with that girl. In response, he says she shouldn't interrupt others. Yara, who was possessed, approaches that ghost hunter, and she even gets closer than necessary, calling her little sister, and using a goat voice, asks if she would like to join in on that action. I know what you're thinking, and it's exactly that. Poor Neon keeps wondering what evil aura this was, and she drops a magic seal. The seal emits a very strong light, and the light was so intense it even blinded the eyes. Since that was obviously a magic spell, our protagonist keeps thinking it was fireworks. All this to deny the existence of ghosts and magic. With Neon's current strength, she couldn't exorcise this demon, so she ends up placing a seal on the girl's forehead, making her faint, and even says she will seek help at a nearby temple. Upon hearing those words, Our protagonist places his hand on her head, thinking the girl is a bit crazy. He says that spirit and ghost stuff doesn't exist, and that she's too old to be playing with this. And meanwhile, the girl keeps asking him to let her go. Yara, who was still possessed, couldn't move because her arms were tied. Besides, that seal on her forehead was making her unconscious. And during the argument, Hao keeps insisting that ghosts don't exist. The girl holds his hands and, with blushing cheeks, asks why he keeps denying it when he has great psychic powers, and ends up asking him to lend a hand and take this girl to a special inspection to remove the ghost from her. However, they sense the presence of another spirit, and the girl already threw Yara onto our hero, telling them to stay alert. The guy in the background keeps insisting for the 1,000th time that ghosts don't exist, and he even keeps provoking Neon, asking where these monsters she talks about are. At that moment, she starts thinking about where the ghosts really might be, since this was a small town with not many shrines. There was a young girl walking in a nearby place, and our hero keeps saying he found someone. When he said it was a little girl, that could be quite suspicious. She wore a school uniform with some bells, and even though she didn't know why, this was the only ghost that appeared in the city. It could be because ghosts are territorial, and each had their own. But since this was a small town with no temples, it wasn't well protected, and the ghost that appeared was of the anecdotal level and had great strength and resentment against exorcists. This ghost was very strong, and not just any special forces agent could stop her. Although, compared to other banshees of the same level, her appearance was unusual. It could even be that she was of an even higher rank. This was one of the only times Neon felt fear. It was as if the feeling of danger suppressed the air around her. She couldn't run while carrying Yara, and without realizing it, the ghost was already very close to her. Our hero keeps shouting from the back for this girl who appeared to go home because it was dangerous. And Neon keeps telling him not to talk like that to the ghost. And he insists that she's not a ghost, but a normal person. At that moment, Neon starts imagining that he is a flirt, and that he's just acting like this to make her feel less afraid. Or maybe, he was a strong warrior putting himself in place to fight the ghost while she escaped. But in reality, he was saying he would go home and leave the two of them behind. Neon thought this was a code, meaning she should flee and seek help at the temple. Maybe there would be time for her to return to the shrine to call reinforcements, since the opponent was powerful. And the guy starts heading home, since he didn't believe in any of this. And the poor girl was imagining that he was a true hero, putting himself at risk to protect her. And she even cries, feeling guilty, because she thought he was a coward and had even said mean words to him. The girl bows in respect and says she will seek help and return as soon as she can. And with tears in her eyes, she says she will never forget this attitude of the boy, even if he is eliminated. This makes our hero ask why she's saying that he might die. And as they part, she says he is a very kind person because he was fighting for her. And in this way, she runs off to go to the shrine for help, and he understands nothing. At that moment, that ghost appears asking if he thinks she is pretty. The girl even seemed cute, but she was wearing a mask, and her face couldn't be seen. It was very strange for someone to approach and immediately ask that, so he steps back. He even tells her to behave and asks why her friend ran away from her. The ghost keeps playing with her hair, a little embarrassed, and asks again if he thinks she is pretty. As he didn't answer, she started to get angry, but he put his hand on her mouth. In response, he said he didn't answer, not because he thought she was ugly, but because he didn't see her properly. And in a very shameless way, he asks if she wanted to practice dual cultivation with him. I think the guy likes goth girls. That's why he asked that. And if you know what dual cultivation is, comment below. Right after, our hero says that his friend is paralyzed because she was feeling pain, and he comments that she is wearing a very flashy cosplay, and asks if by any chance this goth girl has some medicine. However, the goth ghost disappears, and he asks why everyone was suddenly running away. The girl went over to Yara and keeps mentioning that a spirit had possessed her body. And at that moment, the ghost comes out from inside the girl's mouth and keeps telling the goth girl to leave her alone. Meanwhile, the goth girl quickly removes her mask, saying she would devour this spirit. Her mouth was frightening, and she even asks the little ghost if she knew who she was talking to. This was Miss Fenda-sama, a devouring ghost. Now that the little creature knew who she was, the goth girl would teach her a lesson, and prepares to devour the ghost, while the poor thing apologizes. Then she quickly gives Yara a kiss, intending to eliminate the ghost. That was a fine appetizer for a spirit-eating demon, and in this way, she slowly absorbs all the dark energy. That seal ends up falling, and Yara starts breathing a little heavier. That demon comments that it was delicious, and now she would enjoy the main course. However, Hao steps in front to protect his friend, saying that the goth girl shouldn't do that kind of thing. Even if she liked girls, she shouldn't go around kissing them like that. This makes the goth girl nervous, and asks if he thinks she's pretty, opening that alien mouth. When he saw that mouth, he thought she was very ugly, and looked more like a creature from another world. However, he couldn't say that to her face because girls are very sensitive. Besides, this poor girl was clearly mistreated because of her peculiar condition, and he feels moved, imagining that she must have suffered every possible cruelty, and that's why she wore a mask. He understands the pain she might be feeling, since it's very important for women to feel beautiful. Meanwhile, the ghost wonders why he hasn't answered yet, and she decides that he will be the main course and charges to devour him. At that moment, the boy ends up holding the girl's face and says that actually, she is very beautiful. Besides being cute, she was adorable, and when she took off the mask, he realized she was even more charming than he thought. This makes her blush and her eyes shine, and with much doubt, she asks if she was really cute, and even thinks he wasn't acting according to the rules. In a very sincere way, he says she is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. Her skin was clean, and she had proportional features, and he keeps saying that her teeth were healthy. The guy was sweating cold, afraid of being killed, and he even opens her mouth, saying that the teeth, besides being healthy, are very white. This makes the goth ghost even more embarrassed, asking if he was serious. And he even says that if someone said she wasn't pretty, it's because that person had vision problems, and she falls completely in love, poor thing. Right after, he pats her on the back, saying that next time someone speaks badly about her appearance, she should reprimand them. This makes her blush, looking like a pepper. In response, she said she's not used to reprimanding people. She simply goes there and devours them. He sighs deeply and asks her name. Besides, she should introduce herself and say her name instead of asking if people think she's pretty. She stays there and asks if he really wants to know her name. Extending his hands at the end of that eclipse, he says he thinks she's very pretty and would like to know her name. Letting exorcists know the demon's name would make them even weaker. And this could be a trap, just like the one she fell into in the past, with the exorcist who pretended to care about her. Since she had been through similar situations, she doesn't trust Hao and charges at him. So he keeps wondering why she doesn't just say her name. He imagines it's because of the region they are in, as it was a countryside town. Besides, women dressed properly. Only his friend Yara was wearing a provocative outfit. The goth girl was wearing traditional and conservative clothes. That's why going around telling people her real name could be considered rude. She was already close to devouring him completely. So he has a brilliant idea. The girl manages to grab him, getting ready to take the final bite, and she even says she will make him her main dish. But first she will take off his shirt to avoid tasting fabric. But our hero says he figured it all out, and that maybe she's an orphan who doesn't know her real name. And he gets all excited, saying he understands the reasons why the girl acts this way. The goth ghost wasn't understanding anything, and asks what he means by that. And smiling, he tells her to leave everything to him, and he ends up taking the girl to a store to buy new clothes. Measuring her legs, he mentions that the type of clothes she's wearing doesn't highlight her appearance. Moreover, that type of stocking did not make her legs look long at all. With that, he starts picking out various clothes from the fitting room for her to try on. And he even says that a pink dress with some stockings will make her even cuter, and tells her to put some decorations on her mouth. She doesn't understand why he's doing this for her, and asks if she really should change clothes. Those outfits were from the past century and didn't give her a modern look, and if by chance she wanted to impress men, she should wear clothes that suited her better. He immediately pushes the girl into the fitting room to try on the new clothes. She comments that she's excited. It had been a long time since she wore that old-school uniform, and she can't even imagine the new clothes. But at the same time, she was excited because she met a man who thought she was pretty. Every time she asked that to someone, they ran away in fear. That's why she ended up creating an endless cycle, where all the men ran away from her. However, this boy named Hao was a very different man. This guy was truly a strange person. Outside, he was dying of fear, probably soiled himself, and he even wanted to know why the women of this world are so weird. He's even starting to doubt whether ghosts exist or not. The store employees ended up running away because of the eclipse, and he wonders if maybe they saw some ghost. But his main concern was how he was going to pay for the clothes since there were no salespeople. With that, he ends up taking all his savings from his wallet and putting them on the counter. At that moment, he hears the girl opening the door, and her legs were trembling. With the new outfit, she asks if that clothing was really appropriate. And as she walks out, she strikes a cute pose, asking if he really wanted her to wear those clothes. We have to admit that she looked pretty cute, and he was astonished. However, she wasn't used to this kind of look, and she ends up putting on the mask, saying she feels safer with it. And she also says her mouth is very scary, which is why she would hide it. She gets embarrassed about him looking at her without the mask, but the boy ends up holding her hand, telling her not to hide her face. And he says that she is really very cute and doesn't need to worry about that. Looking at her reflection, she questions whether she was really cute and didn't need to hide. Then he confirms, saying she has a beautiful and dangerous touch, and that people would like her. That makes her happy, and she thanks him, saying she has another concern. Since he was acting in such a friendly and kind way, she began to trust him, and that's why she got very close to our hero's face, and said she would reveal her true name. Her name was Tanaka Ishin. Upon hearing these words, he feels a terrible sensation. Everything started to feel heavy, as if a dark energy was pressing on his body. His consciousness began to fade, causing him to fall to the ground. It was as if all the experiences of this ghost were loaded into his memory. Still dizzy, he tries to understand where he was, and he keeps repeating the girl's name, saying it was very beautiful. And at the same time, he wonders why he had all those hallucinations. After saying her name, the girl mentions that she will remember his name forever, and she had thrown the mask on the ground, and he keeps telling her not to litter the street. But she had already left, leaving him alone on the sidewalk. The whisper of her voice comes into his ear, telling him to wear that mask well. However, dark magic was coming out of the mask, and he mentions it. The day was already brighter, and he even mentions that this goth girl was shameless. The scene shifts to the special organization, with Neon mentioning our protagonist. However, the boss was not sending help to deal with that powerful ghost. The leader mentions that she knows very well that today is a new moon, and there was even an eclipse. At this time of year, the realm becomes more vulnerable to invasions. Holding a little matchbox, she mentions that that place would need some people to handle the ghost. The leader of special operations of the Tokyo headquarters was called Hanani Aki. The place was working frantically because several places had suffered ghost attacks. But the leader was treating Neon's situation as if it were a joke. While holding a candy in her mouth, she asks an employee to melt it with a lighter, and he was complaining that a mysterious hunter was there. Moreover, it was the cut-mouth ghost who had appeared. The candy melts and ends up falling on her foot, and that leaves Hanani desperate, trying to grab something to clean her foot. The guy said she shouldn't treat it so carelessly because the ghost was powerful. Besides, it was an unknown medium who was there, and he could be very useful to the organization. He says this because the boy, who didn't even have training, managed to disperse the ghost, and they watched this using a magic mechanism. They saw that the boy talked to the cut-mouth woman, and even touched her mouth without being attacked by the aggressive ghost. And finally, he managed to discover her name, which was extremely rare. Hanani said that Neon was weak, and that's why this boy had defended her. However, the most interesting of all was the method he used to exorcise the ghost, which was by buying her new clothes. This behavior was very strange because the ghost had voluntarily given up her territory. Maybe this hunter could gain the trust of the banshees and, in the end, eliminate them. Or, in the worst case, he might be an ally of the ghosts. So the leader goes to Neon's hologram, saying that she will have a mission to infiltrate this boy's life, and this would be her final stage training, leaving the girl very scared. Our protagonist was standing in front of a convenience store. The guy was a little depressed, imagining that when he reincarnated in another world, he would have some girlfriends, but it wasn't quite like that. The women of this world were completely crazy. Besides, his money had already run out because the bills were very high. The guy had realized what adult life was like, and he even thinks that if he doesn't get a job, he's going to end up homeless. So he starts cursing the writer of this isekai, saying that in the anime he watches, it's not like this. He would need to work and saw an ad that would pay about 2,000 yen per hour. When doing the math, he realized it was really good money. The job would be at a themed cafe where they would dress up as monsters, but he didn't believe in demons and ghosts. That was because of his religion, which was Confucianism, but at the same time, he shouldn't love money and live a debauched life because that would be a sin. This almost gave him a nervous breakdown because it was hard to stay true to his beliefs. With that, he goes to the place for a job interview, and upon arriving there, he gets scared of the interviewer and even thinks she might not be human. The woman was asking some questions while he could only think about how strong she was. At that moment, he even started to think that monsters existed, and in the middle of the questions, she ends up slamming her hand on the table. He had never seen such a strong girl, and she had a very sweet and delicate voice. The guy even has some naughty thoughts, saying it would be really good to have a muscular wife. She explains that this cafe is for ghosts and demons, and that the boy there is popular in the underworld. That's because down in hell, the goth girl told them that Hao gave investment tips, and with that, she started receiving compliments. Because he managed to help a spiritual being, the interviewer deduced that he was powerful. Moreover, the agency was after him. The guy was wanted because he had a 3-star threat level. That's why the woman had some questions to ask him, and the guy was shaking in fear. The questions would be simple. He should answer what he thought about the existence of monsters and ghosts. Since he thought that was ridiculous, he starts to speak out loud. However, he realized that wasn't the kind of thing to say in an interview, so he starts thinking about all the lies he would have to admit to get this job. He immediately points his finger at her face, telling ghosts and demons to screw themselves because they don't exist and are nothing but a lie. Actually, that's what he was thinking of saying, but he ended up lying, saying that monsters and ghosts are actually people. The woman immediately grabs his hand, and she was all enchanted because she understood that demons and humans were all the same, and none were better than the other. She said he had managed to overcome this human prejudice, and that was incredible. And she starts hugging our hero. And she even says that she can't wait to create a hybrid race between humans and demons so they can prosper in the world. Besides getting this new job, he could also be used to procreate with demons. And the guy starts crying with emotion because, besides earning good money, he would also have the chance to meet beautiful women. He also mentions that it was very good not to judge a book by its cover, because he imagined that this muscular woman would be very mean. However, besides being kind, she was intelligent, and at that moment, she had crouched down to pick up some things. The guy gets worried, asking what she was doing, and she said that he should start working right away. Those were uniforms, and Hao realizes that there were only female uniforms, and he gets worried. He should have expected this because it was a monster-themed cafe where everyone wore maid outfits. He even imagines himself wearing a maid outfit, and that's exactly why he got through an interview so quickly. He goes to the locker room to change. He had been told he could freely choose the clothes, but all of them were maid uniforms. At that moment, he hears a noise, and he starts asking who was there. There was someone on the ceiling, and it was a blue-haired girl, and the guy asks what she was doing there. She replies that she was changing clothes, and he wanted to know who she was. In response, she said she was the barista, bartender, head chef, waiter, assistant, manager, and cleaner of the cafe. She had crouched down to put on her stockings, and he gets all excited, and with that, she kicks him in the face, while the boy asks why she did that. The girl was picking on him, saying that he seemed way too normal to work there. That's because the monster cafe only had monster employees, so it wasn't for just any human to be accepted. And she even starts inspecting the boy's body to see if he had something peculiar. However, he ends up holding the girl, telling her to stop that, and he starts giving her a lecture as if he were an adult scolding a child. Since she had cat ears, he imagines it's just a costume, and there's no way monsters like that exist. The girl tells him to respect her because she was his superior and starts stepping on his face. Moreover, since the buff manager had accepted him, she would give him a vote of confidence. This world was going through some turbulence. A bunch of people claimed to be righteous, and another group of people wanted to corrupt the world. The store manager ended up being born as a hybrid between these two sides. The boy asks if she meant that the manager was a bastard, but it was better to call her a hybrid. People who think it's cool to be righteous don't always have a good heart. And there were people who didn't want to fight in the war, even if they were labeled as evil. And there were still other good people who just wanted to live in peace in the world. That's exactly why the store manager opened this cafe, because she ended up stuck between the two sides of the races. Besides serving coffee, they also helped people. And a young man ends up showing up at the place a little nervous. The muscular woman notices that someone had arrived, and, giving a friendly smile, asks how she could help him. It was hard for an ordinary person to understand all this, but Hao says he understands very well. That's because in his city, there's a famous saying that says there's no good silver or bad silver because it's all the same thing. And, pointing his finger at her, he said he knows very well that there are some people who are bad and pretend to be good. That makes her super excited, jumping over to him. With shining eyes, she said she knew very well that the manager would hire the right people. It was as if he were a pearl in the middle of a field full of mud. In such a short time, he came across ghosts, a job with a maid uniform, a cafe, and a high salary. In his head, he imagined this was practically working in a yakuza. He was feeling like the biggest gangster, and that now he was a war intern. He even thought the muscular giant was the yakuza boss. And this wasn't just exciting. This was incredible and thrilling because he always wanted to be a gangster. And, holding that uniform, he thanks Miss Kitty and says in a very excited way that he's going to give 100% of himself in this new job. Meanwhile, he was there in the locker room changing clothes, and the manager, along with that customer, asks what's going on in there. His new team was very excited, and, turning to the customer, she asks how she could help him. The boy said that after he bullied a classmate, he started to suffer hauntings by ghosts. And the worst part is that these ghosts were doing something terrible to him, which you can already imagine what it is. Hearing this, even the manager gets scared. The guy was very embarrassed for telling that, and he asks if she doesn't believe him. But no, that wasn't why she was shocked. He had said that he bullied a classmate, and she asks more about that. According to this young man, that classmate was someone very suspicious. The student had no friends in real life because he always said he could see dirt. He wore black clothes every day and was obsessed with cleanliness. And in the dressing room, our protagonist was changing his clothes. And the guy who came to ask for help said that the classmate he bullied wore black and white clothes. And the scene cuts again to our hero putting on black and white clothes. He was worried about his hair because it wasn't well combed. And then he puts on a headband to look better. The man said that a week ago he ended up beating that classmate a lot. And from there, he started to suffer hauntings by ghosts. The manager asks what was the name of that classmate he beat up. But at that moment, our protagonist burst into the room calling for the manager. This new employee was 100% dedicated to this company and wanted to show the manager his uniform. That one over there was very excited, let's say. However, the mood was embarrassing, leaving everyone speechless. That boy calls out Hao's name, asking what he was doing there. while our hero wanted to know why that guy was saying his name. So, the cocky bully goes over there to demand an explanation, and said he always knew from the beginning that his classmate was strange, but he didn't imagine he would dress like this outside of school. The muscular woman said to the boy that it didn't matter whether he was a customer or not. She would never let anyone touch a member of her team like that. And even the cat girl gets ready for combat. However, our protagonist asks them to stop, and even says that he remembered everything. That guy bullied him at school, and the bully's name is Mitsuhiro Fujimoto. And our hero says that with shining eyes. And the two realize that Hao suffered bullying, and maybe that's why he is strange. But from Hao's point of view, that guy didn't bully him, but rather was his friend. And he starts acting in a weird way, saying even weirder things. That makes the bully angry, asking if Hao was doing this to embarrass him. At that moment, the manager and the cat girl realize that the new employee was crazy. But in his mind, the bully really was his friend, and he starts shouting that out loud. The manager asks why the bully bullied him, and they should investigate to find out what happened. However, the guy was pushing our hero, telling him to stay away. And he also says that everything started because of that weird lunatic. He had beaten our hero simply because he didn't like him. From there, he felt an entity watching him. It was as if there were countless eyes all turned toward him. And the manager asks if by any chance it was like the looks Hao was giving the boy. Quickly he jumps back, telling this femboy to get away from him. And to make things worse, that entity started to haunt him everywhere, even on the train, haunted him during classes, and haunted even in his house, holding his body. The cat girl asks if that entity was doing the same things that Hao was doing, and that makes the boy angry. In response, the protagonist says he was just messing with his pants, and that, if the bully wanted, he could also mess with his skirt. And at that moment, we see the ghost behind them. And the manager comments that ghosts like that are actually quite common. It was a perverted type of ghost that liked boys. They were walking around the city to see if the ghost would come after them, and our protagonist kept embarrassing the boy. This was attracting everyone's attention, and the bully asks if this was some form of revenge, but Hao gives an excuse saying that the manager asked him to protect him, and even said that he didn't like the boy because he actually liked women, and so they start insulting each other. In the background, we see the silhouette of the ghost watching them. Our hero immediately senses the presence of an evil being, and tells the bully to stay quiet and not make noise. The one spying on them was actually Neon, and when they least expect it, the ghost's footsteps approach. The protagonist didn't believe in ghosts and demons, but he was almost convinced. So he turns to this tall, bald man and says he was hiding well back at the cafe. But the creature was ugly, and he gets scared. It was a bald monster with a monstrous smile. Since he doesn't believe in ghosts, he convinces himself that this was a yakuza from another country. At this point, there are some jokes I can't tell in the video, and the bully starts to feel the presence of this ghost. Our protagonist had been paralyzed, and when he regains consciousness, he realizes he's in danger. Even the bully was paralyzed because that sensation was very heavy. So Hao turns to his schoolmate and says he should remain calm, but the boy had disappeared, and he was being grabbed by the ghost. This disgusting creature said he wanted the boy just for himself, and you can already imagine very well what the monster wanted to do. He says he would absorb the boy's spiritual energy, and at that moment, our protagonist steps on a fire hydrant and says he needs to deal with this. In his head, he should defeat all the mafiosos who invade the city, and now that he was reborn in this other body, he gained more strength so he could defeat any enemy. The hydrant ends up breaking, and water sprays everywhere. With that, he is pushed upwards, preparing to punch the mafioso, who is actually a ghost. The monster senses the presence, and the protagonist says he will give his full force punch. But the ghost had a somewhat gelatinous texture and managed to dodge, making the punch pass very close. At this exact moment, he should already be convinced that demons exist. Even more so looking at the grotesque appearance of this ghost. Neon, who was watching everything from afar, wondered why the boy was wearing that outfit. He was being treated like a toy, being thrown from one side to the other, and he ended up hitting his back hard on the ground. He thought this mafioso was a capoeira fighter, or a jiu-jitsu fighter, and his schoolmate was almost giving up trying to escape. The ghost holds a flower that had fallen on his head, and starts making a philosophical poem, saying that he likes cute things. I don't know, but this ghost here is kind of strange. Seems like he's a fan of Lady Gaga. And holding the boy, he said he wants to reduce the distance between them. The bully calls the ghost a sissy, and right after, he realizes that if the ghost really wanted to do that to him, the boy wouldn't be able to defend himself. Our protagonist realized the ghost's real intentions and got up. Now standing, he started making an excited speech, saying he won't let the mafioso hurt his friend, and even says he wasn't just a simple friend, but actually a little sister. This makes the bully angry, saying he's no little sister at all, so he starts running at full speed to defeat the monster. A flashback begins to tell Hao's past. Our hero was very energetic and even argued with the elders. While the other children were eating, Hao was training, climbing trees, and he even practiced martial arts with his neighbors. And when he got a little older, he had already mastered Kai energy and martial cultivation. Moreover, he developed techniques by watching videos on the internet, and he copied abilities from classic game characters like Zelda and Smash Bros. With that, he charges forward to deliver the Street Fighter double punch. The ghost looks back and realizes something is coming his way, and it was our protagonist using video game moves. The attack ends up hitting directly, creating a wind zone throughout the city. The blow was so powerful that the ghost's dark aura began to dissipate, and he was ripped from that evil energy. Now the boy could remember everything, and he knew the reason why he started chasing the bully. It all started because he had always been rejected throughout his life since he was much taller than his friends. He was even mistaken for a teenager, when in fact he was just a child. When he entered high school, he ended up being shot by a policeman. And with that, evil energies began to flow through his body, thus making him become an evil ghost who chased children. He thought he was chasing because he wanted to become a child of the same height as the others, but today he understood that he was only chasing because he liked cute boys. He says this out loud, scaring the other two, and he goes there to hug Hao's leg, and he kept saying he could stay like that all day. This was quite bizarre, and he started telling this crazy guy to let go of his leg, and he even screamed, saying he stopped being a mafioso and turned into an elementary school student. He even starts imagining that these mafioso people are interested in his martial arts skills. So he stretches out his arms and says he will train them all as his disciples. However, the ghost was just a shameless scoundrel, and the protagonist keeps kicking his face. He makes an excuse, saying those socks smell good, and the bully wonders what level of power his classmate has, since he even managed to defeat a ghost. In the public spirit bathroom, they practiced group cultivation, and that dark energy ran through the drains. And then it spread to all places. A powerful banshee had taken advantage of the portal's opening, and said she wanted to feed on human spiritual energy. But her food here is a bit different, you'll see. The agency leader asks how things are going, and Neon says everything is fine. She reports that Hao defeated a powerful ghost who was chasing a boy, and besides that, everything was okay. The leader says that's good news, and if he is at such a strong level, they could use him to investigate the growing disappearances of people. Touching a fan to her forehead, she performs a spell. She was trying to see what was attracting people to the underworld. The night before, the fox had come out of that drain in a hot spring, and after that, several people disappeared, and the leader was there to investigate. Neon tells her boss not to worry, because from now on, she will keep an eye on Hao to know everything he is doing. The guy starts yelling at her, saying she is annoying and won't leave him alone. And who appeared there and saw that whole scene was exactly Iara. She was the student council leader and liked Hao, and all her friends were watching that scene. The girl gets worried, thinking there is another woman interested in the boy. He said he was at school and that she can't keep following him there because she's not a student. That wouldn't be a problem for the girl, who grabs his outfit, and by tearing his clothes, it shows she had a school uniform underneath and would now be his classmate. And she said that from now on, he wouldn't be able to get away from under her nose. Iara goes there to ask how they are, and he asks for help from the class president, and grabs Neon's shoulder, and immediately throws her back, because Iara asked if she was interrupting their relationship. She remembered that girl, because when she was possessed, she acted strangely toward her. At that moment, she noticed the hunter was near her. She knew that if Iara stayed close to the boy, it would attract even more ghosts, because the two had strong spiritual ties. So she told Iara that Hao wasn't the right man for her, and that if she stayed near him, it would only bring disaster. And she even jumped on his face, making the situation less trustworthy, saying it was for Iara's own good. However, it only seemed like she was trying to get a rival away from the boy she liked, and that made the girl think whether she should give up on the one she liked because of that other girl. It was obvious she was a rival, and she thought the way she acted was very rude. Later, when she got home, she kept saying that Neon was a hypocrite acting like a little saint. She went straight to the shower, and her uniform got all wet while she thought about how this one was very much in love. Not even she knew why she liked him so much, but if by chance he wanted to be with that girl, she would respect it. Thinking about it, it was like a piece of her heart was missing. While lying in the bath, a pink energy came out of the drain, and a voice began calling the little girl. That was the fox ghost that was devouring people in bathhouses. She tries to seduce the young girl, saying she could be the one to awaken the true feeling. Iara asks who that girl was and wants to know where she was being taken, and the fox thinks a pretty girl like that would be worth a lot of money if sold. She wanted to use Iara for some experiments and asks to be her apprentice, and ends up putting her spell on a bracelet that Iara was wearing. This spell transfers part of her energy to her, and the little ghosts start biting the fox's own body. And even she doesn't understand what's happening and wonders what that girl did. That bracelet ended up turning into a trap against the fox, and she ended up being sucked into that artifact. This was unthinkable. It was like her trap turned against herself, and even if she asked for help, she couldn't escape. Poor Iara ended up fainting with that fox ghost sealed in her bracelet. That item seemed to be a magical artifact, but instead of protecting her, it ended up being harmful to her, because the fox managed to dominate her body, since the girl didn't have very strong spiritual energy. And now she would take that boy only for herself, and would have Hao all to herself, and would do double cultivation with him. At school exit, it was raining. He asks his classmates if this project they were mentioning was about a public bathroom. The guy says it wasn't just to build a bathroom in a public area, and our hero says that's exactly what he said. But in this case, it would be a kind of spa for rich people. They didn't know that the place where they built this spa was a historic site where many battles happened. In other words, the place had many ghosts, but the boy thought they were mafiosos. Neon listens to all this and imagines there really could be many ghosts at construction sites. At that moment, someone was approaching our protagonist, and she was wearing a very provocative outfit. That classmate goes there and starts saying they need to go to the construction site to eliminate the ghosts. However, Hao doesn't like these topics and says it's nonsense. The girl ends up sitting down and calls our hero. It was Iara who was possessed by the fox and says she wants to talk to him about their relationship. The guy turns red like a pepper, while Neon finds that very strange, and the bully is dying of jealousy. Then he raises his hand asking if he could talk to her about their relationship, and the girl steps on his face saying no. This is between her and Hao, and therefore he shouldn't interfere, because it scares both of them. The bully runs off and tells Hao not to waste the opportunity to earn money at that construction. Iara sits on top of a desk, putting her feet on the boy, and tries to seduce him using her charm. He asks if she hit her head somewhere, because she shouldn't act like that in public. Meanwhile, the hunter smells something strange coming from the girl, like a dark energy, and when looking at the bracelet, she realizes it might be possessed by an evil aura. Iara notices the girl's intentions and looks at her with a nasty face. Next, she turns her attention back to Hao and says she wants to spend the night at his house. The guy gets excited, but Neon pulls him by the neck, saying he won't do that. He asks why he can't spend the night with Iara, and Neon says it's because she smells like a demon. The scene changes to our protagonist's house. I bet if it were you, you would have accepted that proposal too. He comments to his friend that Iara was acting strange and wants to know why she hid under the bed. In Neon's mind, the boy was a master cultivator, and only acted that way because he was eccentric. Not even the characters in this story know why our protagonist is a clown. This, in fact, was a trap, and they were trying to lure Iara to take her bracelet. The goal was to use our protagonist as bait, and when he realizes it, he notices his hands were tied, and he starts shouting, saying this was much riskier than he thought. Iara ends up closing the door, and now the tension rises. She wore a provocative outfit while humming. Then she sits on the bed with Neon hiding underneath. She provocatively asks if he was asleep or awake. Even wanting to practice double cultivation, he was nervous and stutters that he was waiting for her. The fox was waiting for him to invite her and asks if she could cultivate with him. She grabs a blanket and ends up covering both of them. Deep down, the fox feels this is exactly what Iara wanted, and she gets even more excited, saying this girl had perverse thoughts. The guy complains, saying he can't breathe properly, and with a provocative face, she says from now on, he would be only hers. The guy is absolutely sure she is not normal, and that the president wouldn't say things like that. He didn't believe in ghosts, and even less in demons, but this was way too strange. Neon saw this was the perfect chance to use her phone, because our hero was already totally dominated, and with that seal, the girl managed to trap Iara's foot, and ended up pulling her out of the bed, making the girl hang upside down, asking who was there. Neon even celebrates, saying it would work. Seeing it was that girl, the fox starts cursing, calling her jealous, and frees herself from that spell, saying she won't allow her to do whatever she wants. She thought the girl was trying to steal her how, so she jumps again on the boy, saying she won't give him to anyone. But that was not at all what Neon wanted. She said she was only there to stop the banshees from harming humans, and ends up touching that bracelet to deactivate the spell. A very strong light starts shining in the room, and little by little, Iara begins to return to normal. Her eyes return to their original color, and she ends up losing consciousness, falling into the hero's arms. A moment later, she apologizes, saying she was too excited and asks if she said something strange. It was rude to lie, so he pretended not to understand. But the one who ended up freed was the fox ghost. She said it was very irritating, and that she was defeated by a simple hunter. She wanted to dominate the world, and for that, using the bracelet served her well. The guy immediately shouts, asking where that woman came from. Neon says that's the leader of the group they were looking for, whom she had mentioned many times, but to their misfortune, they ended up freeing her, as she was trapped inside the bracelet. Again, she got into trouble and started calling her senpai to help her, because the fox had just kidnapped Iara, carrying her in her arms and jumping from building to building. From above, people were seen running in fear and told the exact place where they were. The moon was red, and the people below began acting as if they were bewitched. After passing all the information to her partner, he said he would notify the group leader. And when she looks at the bed, she realizes the boy had also disappeared. This one was going to earn the Employee of the Month title. The squad leader was relaxing in a hot spring. She wanted to spend a few hours without thinking about ghosts and just rest, and even comments that it was very nice not to think about work for a while. At that moment, the fox's energy starts coming in through the hot spring drain. The poor girl realizes something was wrong with her bath but doesn't know exactly what it was. This hot spring spa was exactly the place where that bully had mentioned there were ghosts. So many skeletons started coming out of the ground. They were skeletons from a samurai battle that happened centuries ago. The poor girl, who just wanted to relax on her day off, started screaming, and soon after was thrown out of the hot bath and fell hard, hitting her face on the ground. Who was there was Iara, who had been brought by the fox. She said she finally managed to bring her to this place because that girl had valuable beauty, and poor Iara wonders what she did to deserve all this. The leader was happy to have found the pink spirit, and immediately cast a spell to trap her. She ended up trapping Iara along with the fox. The banshee asked who was this human that cast a spell on her, and the leader only realized now that there was another human girl with the ghost. This made the banshee furious, asking if Iara was a friend of the yin-yang masters, but the leader said it was nothing like that and ended up removing the bond. And to calm the girl, said she would take her safely back home, but that would be difficult because the fox would not let her prey be taken so easily, and ended up jumping away while holding Iara with her tail. Halfway through, the leader managed to grab the fox's foot, but she was dragged through the air along with her. That banshee was very powerful and asked how this leader could keep up with her speed, and still gave a little excuse saying she knew the master would try to chase her. So she had set up a plan so the cultivation masters wouldn't interfere, and this form ended up activating the lust spell on Iara and perverse spells on the leader. Both magics made the victims reveal their deepest desires, making them become the true specter of lust. All this was an experiment by the fox wanting to see what humans are capable of, and she kept watching that scene, having fun with it all. To add more fuel to the fire, she asks the master if that was so, but the level of human perversity shocked her, since the desires of humans were even darker than the desires of demons. We see a flashback of the master when she was a simple child with great talent for cultivation. Just by waving her fans, she threw intense spiritual energies, even capable of eliminating stronger ghosts. Since birth, she was destined to become a master, and her talent was so strong that even ghosts trembled with fear. Over time, her determination began to waver. That feeling of looking down on others was really what she wanted. Then the idea of wanting to reverse the situation began to take root in her heart, and gradually it became even more twisted. There are many analogies here, and I don't know if it was clear to you. Iara also had some perverse desires, and said she understood the girl very well, and says she always wanted to eliminate daily routines, because she was a simple student who got good grades and also acted kindly. But all those characteristics were results of her parents' early death. Since she was an orphan, she had a great desire to be loved, and didn't get that feeling from anyone. Thus, she ended up directing all her feelings to Hao, and even wanted to treat him like a pet. This one was crazy even when she was not possessed by ghosts, and still comments that his smell was very good. The fox didn't believe humans were like that and got excited. And right after, Iara asks the leader what she would like to do, and if she would accept being her pet, promising she would train her to obey properly, and holding a whip, asks again if she accepted that. The leader asks what the hell they were saying, and then Iara puts her hand on the girl, pushing her to the ground, and says she is a disobedient little dog, and that for that reason, she should be punished, striking with the whip. The fox was in the back watching all that to see the level of human evil, and meanwhile the leader kept asking them to stop, because she was feeling scared. And when she looked at the fox, she noticed she had a cute appearance, and with that, asked why such a beautiful being acted with so much evil. At that moment, the fox got shocked, asking if maybe her spell lost its effect, and she started stepping on the girl, saying she should act wickedly because she had put a hypnosis spell on her. And that's exactly what happened to the girl, acting with some perversity, showing how wicked humans are, and still bites the fox's ear saying it smelled good. She starts celebrating, saying she was very excited, and that spell mark appeared again on her forehead. At that moment, an explosion happened and someone appeared cursing them. Who was there was our protagonist, saying Iara should stay only with him. The crazy guy was on top of a car, and managed to break the wall, hitting hard, and even threw the poor girl to the ground. He got angry at the driver, saying he almost ran over his waifu, but she had that perversity spell, and already looks at him, asking if he thinks he can do whatever he wants, and right after grabs the whip. She crawls onto the car, trying to seduce him, and from inside, the bully sees her jumping on the car roof, and even thanks for that heavenly sight. He asks if she was kidnapped by the mafia, and if they did hypnosis on her. And with a demonic voice, she said she was not kidnapped. Actually, she is living what she always wanted, and invites him to be her pet, which was something she always wanted. The guy, of course, thinks this is absurd, and starts sweating cold. and she starts approaching, saying she would cultivate if he accepted. Now it seems he understood her real intentions, and the girl still has that sweet talk, saying she would do everything he wanted, but in the end, admits she would like to absorb him completely, and finishes asking if he accepts the training. She wanted to make a contract with him to keep feeding on his spiritual energy. The guy didn't quite understand what she wanted, but since she mentioned double cultivation, he got excited. It was very interesting, a beautiful girl like her liking him, and he even starts taking off his uniform, making Iara's eyes shine even stronger. However, our protagonist was a man of respect and said he wouldn't take advantage of her and put the uniform back to cover her. He knew she was not in her right mind, so it would be wrong to do that. Thus, Iara got furious and said he was changing the subject on purpose. She knew very well he was depressed and felt lonely, so she would be there to keep him company. The fox started coming out from the rubble and ended up lifting the car with her hands. She had used that spell on Iara just to see the level of human perversity, but she didn't imagine she would go that far, and already starts lifting the girl, telling her to go calmly. That red moon was going away, which meant the portal between realms would close, so she needed to leave as soon as possible, or she would get trapped, and she ended up leaping away, inviting Iara to follow her. And from above she said she would return, because she found this boy very interesting. However, she would need to do something to prevent him from interfering with her plans, so she takes some energy from her tail, and then throws it on that spa land, which was formerly a samurai battlefield. As soon as the energy from her tail hits the ground, many skeletons start rising, and they come to life because of this magic. If you like this story, don't forget to leave your comment. This also helps YouTube recommend the video to more people. So that's it. See you later, folks.